Picture this. You are standing at the front door of your own home. Your suitcase is sitting on the steps outside. Your husband is inside, laughing with another woman, and his mother is standing right behind him, smiling, like she just won something she had been quietly planning for a very long time. Now think about 11 years. 11 years of cooking his meals, ironing his shirts, crying alone in bathroom stalls after every failed pregnancy test, then walking back out and pretending everything was fine. Swallowing your pain at every family dinner while his sisters whispered and his mother looked at you like a broken machine she had been tolerating far too long. 11 years of trying, of hoping, of quietly bleeding on the inside while smiling on the outside. And then, right when fate was finally about to do something beautiful in your life, they threw you out. With nothing, not even a proper goodbye. But here is what they did not know. When the wrong people break you, fate has a way of rebuilding you into something they will never recognize or reach. This is Eleanor's story. Stay with me until the end. Eleanor Calloway was the only daughter of David Calloway, a quiet, brilliant man who loved her more than anything in this world. When David passed, Eleanor carried his warmth everywhere she went. Kind blue eyes, a laugh that could fill a room, a heart so full of love it sometimes felt like a burden, because she kept giving it to people who did not know what to do with it. At 26, she married Raymond Hayes. Raymond came from old money. The Hayes family estate had been in the family for generations. Raymond's apartment in one wing, his mother Margaret's just across the courtyard. Close enough that Margaret could knock before breakfast. Close enough that Eleanor never, not for a single day of 11 years, felt truly in charge of her own home. She had walked into a life already fully arranged, and Margaret intended to keep it that way. Margaret was a tall, sharp woman who wore pearls even to the grocery store. She smiled at Eleanor on the wedding day and said, "Welcome to the family, darling." She did not mean it. Margaret had one obsession, a grandson, an heir. And every year without a baby was another year she made Eleanor feel like she was failing at the only thing that mattered. At family gatherings, Raymond's sisters would offer that special cruelty disguised as sympathy. "Oh, Eleanor," Lisa said once, patting her hand. "Don't worry, some women just aren't meant to be mothers." She smiled when she said it. She meant it like a knife. Eleanor and Raymond tried everything. 5 rounds of IVF, each more heartbreaking than the last. By the 5th failure, she sat in her car outside the clinic for an hour, staring at nothing. She did not cry that day. She had simply run out of tears. When the doctors finally said, "Mrs. Hayes, we have done everything we can. Conceiving will not be possible for you," Raymond drove home in silence. Eleanor stared out the window and quietly broke in too. But she stayed because she loved him, because she had made a promise, because somewhere in that stubborn heart of hers, she still believed fate had not written the final chapter yet. Then, about 7 weeks before everything changed, Eleanor received a call. "Ms. Hayes, this is Dr. Daniel Ashford from the Luminary Institute. We believe there is a new protocol that may give you a real chance at conceiving naturally." Hope felt dangerous, like touching a flame you already knew would burn you. But something deep inside her said yes. When Daniel reviewed her full history, every test, every IVF cycle. He saw something years of other doctors had missed. The painful periods brushed off as normal, the chronic pelvic pain, the failed implantations. It all pointed to one thing: endometriosis, a condition affecting 1 in 10 women, yet taking an average of 7 to 10 years to diagnose because the pain is so often dismissed. Every round of IVF had been fought inside a body silently working against her, and no one had ever told her why. "This was never your fault," Daniel told her. "You were never the problem. You were simply never given the right diagnosis." His treatment, surgery to remove the disease from the root, followed by targeted medication, gave her the best possible chance to conceive naturally. Eleanor followed every instruction faithfully. She did not tell Raymond. Hope had become something she carried alone. One evening she came home feeling different, lighter, like something quiet had shifted inside her. They had dinner, talked the way they used to, and later they were close in the way married people sometimes are. Not out of passion, but out of habit, out of the memory of who they used to be. It was ordinary. Nothing about that evening felt like a miracle. But sometimes, the most life-changing things happen in the quietest, most unremarkable hours. A few weeks later, the doctor smiled at her results. "Ms. Hayes, you are pregnant." Pregnant. After 11 years. After 5 failures. After being told it was impossible. She walked home with her hand on her stomach, heart so full she could barely breathe. She was going to tell Raymond. She imagined finally being enough. She never got the chance. Her suitcase was on the steps, divorce papers on top. Through the window, Raymond laughing with a woman she had never seen. Vanessa, young, confident, already at home in Eleanor's kitchen, and Margaret right beside them, wearing the same smile from the wedding day, the one that never quite reached her eyes. Eleanor's hand moved to her stomach. She wanted to say, "Wait, I am carrying your child. Right now. I am carrying new life, and you are throwing me away." But something stopped her. Maybe dignity. Maybe fate whispering, "Not here. You are worth more than begging at this door." So she turned around, picked up her suitcase, and walked. She walked until the streets grew quieter, stopped on a sidewalk, set her suitcase down, and stared at her own reflection in a shop window. Tired, betrayed, pregnant, and alone, but still standing. That was when a sleek black Mercedes slowed and stopped. Sir William Ashford was 67, a man who had built a quiet empire through patience and principle. He was being driven home when something made him glance out the window and see her. A woman alone with a suitcase, staring at her reflection with the stillness of someone trying very hard not to fall apart. Something about her face made his chest tighten. Familiar. Just out of reach. "Stop the car! Reverse! Slowly!" He stepped out and walked toward her, took both her hands in his, the way an elder does, because some moments do not require permission. "Why are you crying?" That voice, warm and without judgment, broke something open in Eleanor. She told him everything. He did not interrupt, did not check his watch. He simply listened with the full, rare gift of his complete attention. When she finished, he said, "You will be safe, and you will not be alone." Eleanor had been strong all evening, through the suitcase, through the walk, through all of it. But those 7 words, spoken so simply, without condition, were the first kind ones anyone had offered her all day. She said yes before she had finished deciding to. He picked up her suitcase himself and carried it to the car. The drive was quiet, not uncomfortable, just still. The kind of stillness that settles between 2 people who have both learned not to fill silence with noise. Eleanor watched the city move past the window. Streetlights, late traffic. The ordinary world continuing on as if nothing had shifted. Sir William did not ask questions. He simply sat across from her with the calm of a man who had long ago stopped needing to perform ease, and simply had it. At one point he said, "Are you warm enough?" That was all. But something about the smallness of it, the simple, unhurried care of it, made her throat tighten in a way the whole evening hadn't managed to. She nodded and turned back to the window. By the time the car stopped, she had stopped shaking. When the penthouse door opened, Eleanor stepped inside and froze. Standing across the room, calm and completely at home, was Dr. Daniel Ashford, her doctor, the man who had called her, the man who had changed everything. Their eyes met. The shock was mutual. "You know each other?" Sir William asked. "He is my doctor," Eleanor said softly. Sir William looked at his son, because Daniel was exactly that, and an unreadable smile crossed the old man's face. "Come and sit," Daniel said gently. "You have had a very hard day." And just like that, without ceremony, without anyone planning it, Eleanor Calloway was home. She kept the penthouse with quiet care. Sir William told her every evening that her cooking was the best he had eaten in years. Daniel monitored her pregnancy faithfully, but slowly their conversation stretched beyond medicine, into stories, into laughter, into the kind of easy talking that only happens between 2 people who have stopped performing for each other. One evening he said something that made her laugh, genuinely, unexpectedly, the kind that arrives before you can stop it. She covered her mouth. He looked at her, then went very quiet. She caught him looking. He glanced away, but not quickly enough. Neither of them said anything, but the air between them had shifted, and they both felt it, and neither was ready to name it yet. One afternoon, while cleaning the study, her hand touched something on the topmost shelf, pushed behind old books, a small wooden box. Inside, old photographs, black and white, edges soft with age. 2 young men standing in front of a building, laughing. The one on the left, clearly a younger Sir William. The one on the right made Eleanor's hands go completely still. She knew that face. She had grown up with that face. She had memorized every line of it before she lost it forever. Her father, David Calloway. Sir William appeared in the doorway immediately. "What happened?" She held up the photograph with shaking hands. "Do you know this man? The one beside you?" Sir William took it, looked, then looked at her, then back at the photograph. "David," he said, the name coming out like something held for a very long time. "David Calloway, my closest friend, for over 40 years. He passed away 4 years ago. I looked for his family. I never found them." "He is my father," she whispered. The silence that followed was the deepest she had ever sat inside. Sir William looked at her face, her eyes, the way she held herself, and 40 years of friendship came flooding back. No wonder that face on the sidewalk had stopped him. He had been looking at David Calloway's daughter and had not even known it. The old man wept, not quietly. Deep, shaking, real tears that had years of love and loss behind them. Eleanor wrapped her arms around him, this stranger who had stopped his car for her, given her shelter when she had nothing, and who had been her father's dearest friend without either of them knowing it. She held him while he cried, and he held her back, tight the way a father holds a daughter, and said into her hair, "No wonder I could not stop thinking about your face. From the very first moment I saw you, I knew you. I just did not know that I knew you." He cupped her face in his old hands. "You are home now. David's daughter is home." From that evening, she stopped calling him Mr. Ashford. She called him Papa William. The first time it slipped out, softly, handing him tea one quiet morning, he stopped, his eyes filled. He put his hand over hers, and neither of them needed to say anything else. He told her about her father's estate, preserved and protected, waiting for her, because David had trusted Sir William with that task, and Sir William had never once considered failing him. Eleanor had an inheritance. She had always had one. She simply had not known where to find it until now. Everything her father had built had been quietly waiting for her all along. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when Daniel knew. She was in the sitting room, shoes off, one hand resting on the curve of her bump, reading aloud to the babies she had not yet met. She did not know he was there. He stopped in the doorway and just watched her. Something in his chest gave way. Slow, complete, inevitable. He had fallen in love with her, not in spite of everything she had been through, but because of who she had remained through all of it. That evening he went to Sir William, found him in his armchair, reading, and sat across from him. "I want to marry her. I am asking for your blessing, because she is David's daughter and she deserves to be asked for properly." Sir William set his book down, looked at his son for a long, careful moment. "She has been through enough. If you are not certain, do not start." "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." Sir William held his gaze, then gave one slow, deliberate nod. On a clear winter morning at the Luminary Institute, Eleanor gave birth to 3 babies, James, Thomas, and Rose. Daniel delivered them himself. He was not going to let anyone else be in that room. And when the first cry came, then the second, then the third, Eleanor laughed and sobbed at the same time. 3. After everything. 3. One evening, babies asleep, they sat on the balcony together. "You are the strongest person I have ever met," Daniel said. She shook her head. "Not strong because nothing hurt you," he said. "Strong because everything hurt you, and you still chose to keep going, every single time." Then he went quiet and looked at her the way he had been carefully not looking at her for months, and said it plainly. "I have fallen in love with you. I am not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know." She looked at him in the soft evening light. This man who had called her when no one else would, who had never once looked at her like she was less than she was. She did not answer with words. She reached across and took his hand. And they stayed like that until the city below was the only sound left. A year and a half later, an email arrived from Raymond. "You are invited to my wedding. Come and see how quickly my mistress got pregnant." 7 cruel words designed to remind her she was someone he could still wound. Daniel found her, read it, set it down carefully. "He wants to hurt you. That is all this is. A small man who made the worst decision of his life and cannot live with it." Her eyes were fierce, not sad, fierce. "Then let him see," she said softly. "Let him see exactly what he threw away." That evening, Papa William read the email in his armchair, was quiet for a moment. Then, "My darling, I am too old to sit in a field and watch that man's circus. But you will not arrive small. You will arrive in a way that tells everyone, without a single word, exactly who you are and where your life has gone." He patted her hand. "Leave the arrangements to me." On the morning of Raymond's wedding, Eleanor was straightening Rose's dress when she heard it. A sound, low at first, then closer, then unmistakable. On the private airstrip beyond the estate, a sleek white jet was touching down. Papa William's jet, gleaming in the morning sun. James ran to the glass, pressed both hands against it. "Aeroplane! Aeroplane!" Thomas slid across in his socks. Rose clapped and said slowly, like a discovery, "Aero! Plane!" Eleanor laughed, the kind of laugh that comes with tears. Because standing there, watching her babies at the window, knowing a private jet waited for her, that a good man stood beside her, that an old man who loved her like a father had arranged all of this quietly. She thought about where she had been 2 years ago. A sidewalk, a suitcase, a reflection of a woman trying not to fall apart. She had never imagined this. She had been told for 11 years that she was lucky to have what she had, that she should not want more, that she was the problem. And now look, just look. The tears came, full and unstoppable. Daniel held her while she cried, not from sadness, from the overwhelming gratitude of a woman given back more than was ever taken from her. "Ready?" he said softly. She wiped her eyes, straightened her gown. "Ready." And together they stepped out toward that jet and did not look back. Eleanor stepped off first, lilac gown flowing, diamond necklace catching the light, Daniel's hand in hers. The triplets tumbled behind them, full of toddler energy. James pointed at everything. Thomas escorted Rose with great seriousness. Rose surveyed the beautiful field and decided, with the authority of a 1-year-old, that she approved. The whispers started the moment her feet touched the grass. She did not look broken. She did not look bitter. She looked luminous, like a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side into something so much better. The fire almost seemed worth it. Raymond's eyes moved, slowly, with the dread of a man understanding the full cost of what he had done. To Eleanor, to Daniel, to the 3 children tumbling between them. James, Thomas, Rose. Something cracked open in his face. He crossed the grass toward her, ignoring the crowd, ignoring Vanessa frozen beside him, ignoring his mother's sharp intake of breath, until he was standing directly in front of Eleanor. "Eleanor," his voice came out broken at the edges. "Are they yours?" she said, without cruelty, as if speaking something that simply could not be unsaid. "Yes." The silence that followed was absolute. Margaret's hand went to her pearls. Vanessa's bouquet trembled. "I don't understand," Raymond said. "The doctors said it was impossible." "They were wrong," Eleanor replied. "Or rather, they were looking at the wrong thing for 11 years. I had endometriosis, undiagnosed, a condition that was silently preventing conception the entire time. Every round of IVF failed because no one ever looked underneath the surface. Dr. Ashford was the first doctor who did." She let that land. "The morning you and your mother put my suitcase on the steps, I was walking home to tell you something we had both been waiting 11 years to hear. I was going to knock on that door and tell you we were finally going to be parents." She watched his face as it began, slowly, horribly, to understand. "And then I saw the suitcase, and the divorce papers, and Vanessa laughing in my kitchen, and your mother wearing the same smile from our wedding day." Her eyes moved, just briefly, to Margaret. Margaret opened her mouth. Eleanor simply looked at her, and Margaret closed it. "So I turned around," Eleanor continued. "I did not knock. I did not call out. I picked up my suitcase, with our children already growing inside me, and I walked away." Raymond's face crumbled, not dramatically, the way a wall crumbles when the foundation finally gives, quietly, completely, with nothing left to hold it up. "Eleanor," he started. "I am not telling you this to wound you," she said. And she meant it. There was no venom in her voice, just the clear, clean truth of a woman who had already done all her grieving. "I am telling you because you deserve to know exactly what happened on that step. You made your choice, and I made mine." She glanced back at Daniel, who stood a quiet, steady distance away, watching her with the kind of love that needs no performance, and then back at Raymond one final time. "I think we are both exactly where we were always meant to end up." It was into this silence that the sound of footsteps came across the grass. Firm, purposeful, unhurried. A man appeared at the edge of the crowd. He walked in a straight line directly to Vanessa and stopped. Vanessa's face changed entirely. "Marcus, you were not supposed to come. I never agreed to anything." He was not performing, just a man who had made up his mind. "I kept waiting for you to choose what you actually wanted. You did not. So, here I am, choosing for both of us." The crowd did not know what Vanessa had never said out loud. The Alcotts and the Hayes had been bound by business for 2 generations. Margaret had approached Vanessa 18 months ago over a private lunch and laid it all out plainly. Eleanor was done. Raymond needed to move forward. Vanessa was the right fit, right name, right world, right circles. It was presented less like a love story and more like a board decision. What Margaret did not know was Marcus, an architect, self-made. The kind of man who looked at Vanessa like she was a person rather than a position. She had loved him quietly for 2 years and chosen the arrangement over him because she had been raised to choose what looked right over what felt true. The child she carried was his, had always been his. Vanessa looked at Raymond, then at Marcus, then at the crowd of people she had spent her whole life trying to impress, and something simply gave way. Raymond, I am sorry, not because I did not try, but because I walked in knowing my heart was somewhere else entirely. You deserved better than someone going through the motions. So did I. Then she turned to Eleanor. I am truly sorry. I knew the shape of what Margaret was arranging, and I said yes anyway. You had loved that man for 11 years, and I walked into your home like it was already mine. No woman deserves that, least of all you. Then she faced Margaret, and every last trace of deference was gone. You told me Eleanor was already finished, that it was clean, that all I had to do was show up. You never mentioned 11 years of IVF. You never mentioned a woman who was still hoping. You picked me the way you pick wallpaper, Margaret, because I matched the room. Margaret opened her mouth. It is already done, Vanessa said quietly. And Margaret Hayes, pearls, posture, and all, stood completely silent. For the first time in her life, she had no move left to make. Raymond was not looking at Vanessa. He was not looking at Marcus or his mother. He was looking at James, crouched down inspecting a beetle in the grass with complete scientific seriousness. At Thomas, holding Rose's hand because she had decided she was done standing and wanted to sit. At Rose herself, who looked up at that moment directly at Raymond with Eleanor's eyes. Wide, unbothered, entirely unaware of what she had just done to him simply by existing. Raymond Hayes stood alone in the middle of everything he had arranged, and lost, and broken, and could never, ever get back. Karma does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it walks in wearing a lilac gown, holding a good man's hand, with 3 children laughing in the grass, and simply stands still and lets the truth finish the rest. Daniel turned to Eleanor, reached into his pocket, dropped to one knee on the grass, in front of everyone who had ever doubted her. Eleanor Calloway, you are the most remarkable woman I have ever known. Will you marry me? The tears came before she could stop them. She nodded. He rose, cupped her face in both hands, slowly, deliberately, and kissed her, right there on that field, in front of Raymond, in front of Margaret, in front of every person who had ever looked at her like she was not enough. It was not a performance. It was a declaration, tender and unhurried, and absolutely certain. The kind of kiss that says, I see you, I choose you, I am not afraid of who is watching. James grabbed Thomas's hand and watched the adults cry with solemn toddler curiosity. Rose clapped and laughed because she was Rose, and the whole world was still wonderfully simple to her. They married weeks later in early spring. Small, intimate, just the people who had earned the right to be in the room. Papa William sat in the front row in his best suit, already blinking too much. When Eleanor appeared, Daniel forgot how to breathe. She was not performing for anyone, just walking toward him with her eyes on his face. And the steadiness in her gaze undid him completely. The vows were their own words, no borrowed poetry, just 2 people saying plainly what they meant. I see you, I am staying, I will keep showing up. They had both lived enough to know those were the only promises that mattered. Afterward, Daniel held her in the middle of the room, forehead to forehead, barely swaying. Across the room, Papa William sat with Rose asleep on his chest, one tiny fist curled around his lapel, pretending hard not to cry. He caught Eleanor's eye and smiled, full, unguarded, carrying David Calloway in it, and 40 years of friendship, and a photograph in a wooden box. She smiled back, and that was everything. Months later, an ordinary morning. 3 toddlers at the breakfast table, all opinions, no patience, scrambled eggs everywhere. James had redesigned his plate into something only he understood. Thomas was explaining himself to his cup. Rose ate one solemn bite at a time, pausing to assess the situation. Eleanor stood at the counter laughing, really laughing, at something James had just done with his spoon. She did not know Daniel was watching her from the doorway. He was watching her the way he had watched her months ago, before he had names for any of it. Except now it was his doorway, his kitchen, his children, and this woman was his wife. He thought, this is everything. Not the grand moments, but this. Tuesday morning, 3 opinionated toddlers, a woman laughing in morning light. He walked over and put his arms around her from behind. She leaned into him, the easy, thoughtless lean of someone who has learned it is safe to rest. James looked up and pointed with his spoon, satisfied. Rose said, "Daddy." Thomas continued his address to the cup, and Eleanor laughed again, and the sound filled the kitchen, and Daniel held her a little tighter, and the morning moved forward the way good mornings do, ordinary, unhurried, and entirely enough. She had kept walking, even when she had nothing left but the next step. And look, just look, where the walking had brought her. 3 children, a man who loved her completely, an old man with tears in his eyes and her father's face in his memory, and her daughter asleep in his arms. And a life full, real, entirely hers, more beautiful than anything she ever thought to ask for. The woman they threw out with a suitcase had found her way home, not back to the home she had lost, to the one she had always deserved. If you enjoyed this love story, please like, comment, and subscribe to see more heartfelt tales. Your support helps us continue creating the stories that make your heart race.